And we are recording, I think. Yes, we're recording. So let's get started. Thank you all again for joining this morning. I hope you found it useful yesterday and that you were able to jot something down for your exercise. Some of you have already sent me your exercise, so that's really cool. And you should have gotten an email yesterday also explaining a bit more how you can send it to me. Someone sent it by email, so that's also perfectly fine. And I'm very excited that I'm getting some answers back. I half wasn't expecting it, but I'm really cool. I find it really cool that you guys are taking those steps, small steps to make start getting aware of these things and making these changes. That's really what I was hoping for this taster. So yes, day 2 of the Back to Basics for Ambitious Introverts taster. So yesterday we talked about how to create mental space by creating more opportunities for relaxation and recharge. And today we're talking about the other side of the matter, and that is setting boundaries around things that take a lot of energy away. So again, we're gonna go for short and sweet. I'm aiming for 15 minutes with another short exercise at the end. And you'll have until Monday morning to send me your exercises. So you can also wait until all the 3 days are over and then do all of them. I know I like to do that sometimes, or you can send them one by one, whatever feels right to you. And Monday evening, I'm going to have the masterclass about 5 elements for ease and fulfillment in your work. And I call that the natural productivity circle. And during the masterclass, the person that I will be interviewing in the private group will also be announced. So let's briefly recap where we left things yesterday. Because today we're talking about energy boundaries and why energy. So yesterday we talked about that introverts go through a very extensive self-reflection process. So I put it here as kind of a flow chart because people learn in different ways, and this is slightly more visual if you're more visually inclined. So when we have a new experience, the experience is all about gathering information for us, and then comes the self-reflection process that helps us to make new connections or old connections and formulate our thoughts and ideas. And from this, we usually come up with a very well thought out and thorough plan. Now, this entire process on the left-hand side all happens in our heads most of the time. And most introverts will only at the end come out and talk about their plan. I'm gonna move my head over here because that's when they come out in the world and share it with others. Now let's compare this to how this might go for an extrovert. So when an extrovert has a new experience, a lot of the time there are already new ideas and thoughts popping up for them. And they are very likely to, at that stage, already come out and talk about it to other people because they do this reflection process in collaboration with other people. So gathering information, reflecting, and creating the plan, that all happens a lot of the time in while speaking for an extrovert. And you'll notice that at the end here, there is another feedback loop. So the plan for an extrovert, that it can still change. So it can still go back into the reflection process and be adapted. Whereas most introverts, when we come up with a plan, usually we feel like that's set. It has been double checked and triple checked, and we, to a certain extent, know that that's right. And that's why we only kind of share it at that stage. Well, you can imagine because these processes are so different and also the communication styles around them are very different, that there can be a lot of, this can lead to a lot of miscommunication and misunderstandings when introverts and extroverts interact with each other and they don't understand each other's process. In terms of energy, I suspect that an extrovert spends energy here, but interacting with other people, that usually gives them energy, and most of their process is over here. Whereas for an introvert, we spend most of our energy over here in interacting with other people on the right-hand side. But I suspect that we're also spending a lot of energy in this self-reflection process, because you see, there's a lot of feedback loops here, and just because of the amount of detail that we're processing, like what we talked about yesterday. If you consider that the brain uses about 20% of the body's energy in a resting state, then I can only imagine how much energy it costs to actively go through this process. So this is why I like to talk more about energy management instead of time management. And it may be a bit unconventional, an unconventional route to productivity, but I'm going to explain to you why I think that energy management is more effective as an approach, especially if you're introverted. Who has ever had this thought? If I can do more in less time, I will reach all my goals. So this is exactly where I started when I first started getting interested in productivity. I've had this thought so many times, and I was not quick to let it go. Because I thought that if I could fit as many things as I could possibly do in the time that I have, then I would be more effective. And a couple of years later, I almost burned out. So this was before I realized how an introvert naturally, the natural process for an introvert happens. And let's take a closer look at time management. So time, it's intrinsically capped. We can never make more time. So if you try to fit more in the time that you have, you will eventually run into a wall. But I kept asking myself, what if? Because time management, in theory, should be able to create more time for you, right? It should be able to open more time because you're doing things faster. But so let's do a little thought experiment. Imagine that we could actually have more time. We could have twice as many hours in the day, and we'd sleep the same amount. So no loss there. So this sounds great, right? We would finally be able to work off all the to-dos on our to-do list. We'd finally be able to do all the activities, all the gardening, read all the books, everything. Well, the problem with this is that when we look only at time management, we tend to do more of the same things. We tend to fall into the same activities. We just add more to-dos to our list. We take on another project. We check our email more often, or we check social media more often. So if you think about it, not having enough time isn't really the issue here. The issue is the choices that we make about what to spend our time on. Also trying to do more in a limited amount of time does not always equal better. I would argue from a productivity point of view that more usually equals less. When you try to do more, you either end up with lesser quality or with lesser output, especially when you look on a longer time scale. And the most important thing is that time management, if you focus solely on that, it disregards energy depletion. And as we've seen, especially for introverts, energy is a very important theme, because we not only spend energy when we interact with our world, we're also spending energy in our internal self-reflection process. And this process, that's happening anyway. There's no real way to shortcut it. So setting energy boundaries is a way to reserve the energy for the really, really important calculations, so to speak, so that you can spend the available energy that you had on the things that are really important. Setting energy boundaries is mostly about protecting us from physical fatigue. And when you have more energy, you can do more focused and more deep work. And the really good ideas and the really actionable plans, that's usually where they live, when you're able to do this deep work. When you focus your energy boundaries, when you determine them around the things that you find important, that also helps you to create clarity. And it becomes much more easy to prioritize. The problem with a classical to-do list is just a running list of everything, is that it lacks priority. And that's a lot of the time why we get stuck. And then a nice side effect, productivity-wise, is again that you take away some of the inconsistencies and the irregularity that you get by throwing fatigue into the mix, and your output becomes more consistent. I want to spend a moment here on consistent output, because I know I go on and on about this. Why actually do I think it's important that your output needs to be consistent? Because everywhere around us, we hear about stories, sometimes in the media and sometimes through hearsay, about people doing amazing things overnight, like these overnight successes that are getting breakthroughs from 0 to 100. And it's no wonder that we feel bad about not making progress, or we feel bad about that we need to take time to formulate our thoughts, or that we feel bad about needing a break after a Zoom meeting, like maybe even a short one like this. So either other people or sometimes in our own mind, we conveniently forget that there are no overnight successes. That this person probably has been grinding away at this thing for 10 years before this miraculous success happened. And especially when you're an introvert, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you want to be into it in it for the long run. And if you're an introverted entrepreneur, energy is one of the things that I believe is going to help you get there. Now, how do you set energy boundaries? In a practical sense, this means that saying no to things that deplete you and that don't fit with what's important to you. But before we can do that, we have to become aware of the things that deplete us. So I've come up with another short exercise that you can do in, let's say, another 15 minutes after this call or after Friday, if you prefer, to write down 1 to 3 things that take up a lot of energy. I've put a couple of examples here again. So for me, social media is a big one. It's a big energy drain, and I have to be really aware of that. Some people have told me that phone calls are really draining to them, especially if it's with someone they've never met. Long Zoom meetings or long online meetings, probably at the top of all of our lists right now. And for some people, having to work like at a messy desk, that already triggers them and overstimulates them. So you may notice that in this exercise, I didn't say anything about important. And when I talk about energy boundaries, I do say it's to find the things that really center around what you find important. Well, while you're going to make this list, you're probably going to notice that some of the things on there, they can't really be avoided. So don't worry about that right now. We're going to talk a bit about that tomorrow. For this exercise, keep it simple and focus on things that really take energy away from you and really make you feel tired, or the things that really trigger you into an overstimulated state. Okay, I hope that was useful and that you can take this away and get to work. And tomorrow we're going to bring this together and we're going to talk about why environment matters more than motivation. If you have a question for me, please feel free to ask it, and feel free to dash off if you have to go. I'm going to stop the recording.